Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests on. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May, and she has a background in clinical, organizational, and forensic psychology. She co-founded and is the past president of the Metro Detroit Association of Black Psychologists. She is a former American Psychological Association National Diversity Delegate. She is past president of the Michigan Psychological Association Board. She is co-founder and president of A.M. May and Associates. She is currently on the board of trustees for the Michigan Health Council and the Drug-Free Youth in Detroit Advisory Council and faculty at Wayne County Community College. And if that wasn't enough, she is also an accomplished musician and author and public speaker. She's an international vocalist and multiple instrumentalist, including performing at Carnegie Hall and in the 2019 movie Solomon. She is founder and president of Celeste Productions Incorporated. She is a band leader, a music educator, composer, and producer. Released 2 CDs of original music. And as I said, she's an author and a public speaker, and she is on with us tonight. Good evening, Dr. Angie. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, Kim. So it's always so good to be with you. Absolutely.
Yes. All right. So let's get to it. You know, it's been a hard last few days in Michigan. We had another mass shooting at Michigan State.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to talk about where we are as a society, where the changes are. Why are we seeing, and we keep talking about this because it's the end of February, and we're already at 71 mass shootings in the United States. And, you know, we're on track to meet where we were last year, which was 200 plus.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on with our erosion of respect and trust towards one another? Can you talk about that, where we are as a society and what is leading to all these mass shootings? And I know part of it is we cling to the Second Amendment and say that everybody should have guns, but every time I hear of a mass shooting, I hear 3 things. Number 1, this person was mentally ill. And we're always told that when someone's mentally ill, they're not supposed to be able to get a weapon. And in the same case, this gentleman apparently was mentally ill, but was able to carry a legal weapon. Number 2, we always have guns that have these high capacity rounds or magazines where it's machine gun fire. And again, not that if I carried a rifle or just a handgun that went bang, 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 that would be better, but maybe we wouldn't have as much damage. And then 3, we just keep hearing these horrible stories with our vulnerable populations. And I'm not saying that anyone who's shot is not vulnerable, but when it happens in a classroom, when it happens at a hospital, in an office building, what are we saying as a society, Dr. Angie? And I know that's a big question.
Excuse me. It's a big question, and it's an important question, and it's just a multi-layered question with multi-layers, but it's so important. I would say one of the most dangerous aspects of this whole thing is the normalization of it over time.
Yes.
That's one of the most damaging and one of the most dangerous parts of this is, and people have talked about that, it's becoming, kind of like normalized to the point where we have a collective holding of our breath to wait to hear, for the next one, holding of our breath. I'm thankful for, personally, I'm not really doing that quite so much. I almost have yet in the back of my mind, but I'm not going to claim that. But I know so many people living in our American society, in our different states and cities, now when they go out to eat or go to the movies or go to school, that's the back of their mind. And certainly for parents, of course, like yourself and others. So I think that's that is one of the most dangerous parts of this. the multi-layers of your question, I want to tackle from the different aspects of what you laid out. First of all, for those in my profession and professions like mine, people in the social sciences, licensed counselors and social workers and fellow psychologists and psychiatrists, all these different folks who specialize and work with mental ill issues.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we have tried to fight against, as you know, of course, we've talked about it, is the stigma of having a mental health concern or crisis. So on the one hand, as we've talked about, we've seen
Mm-hmm.
some of that work come to fruition. It's getting better in terms of, trying to take away that stigma. So we do see more people and more high profile people, including the new senator from Philadelphia.
Yes.
Yes, I want to say his name wrong, find me. But yeah, he was very open and public about the fact that he admitted himself in inpatient to address his depression issues.
Mm-hmm.
So on the one hand, that's wonderful. We're seeing people talk about it, being less afraid to talk about it. And that takes away, the stigma more and more for so many of our communities to address the fact that they are suffering from mental illness or various aspects of psychological pain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Part of fighting against that stigma has also included those times when we have these horrible, tragic incidents. And while on the one hand, it's exactly like you say, while we say that we hear that the person was suffering from a mental health crisis, we're trying to say, part of fighting against the stigma of mental health issues is the idea that just because you are suffering from a mental health crisis doesn't automatically mean you're dangerous. Right. So that's like one bucket, one aspect of this, which is true. It doesn't automatically mean it. And we know that for the lay public, we try to use terms that are people, understand. You don't have to have gone to, 1,200 years of school to understand it. So mental illness, it's not that it's an inappropriate term. It's an appropriate term for people like this person and others who are suffering a crisis that propels them to pick up arms and, harm innocent people. But we don't parse that out. So I think one of the solutions, if I may say that, one of the things that might help is to understand that when we're talking about people who are harming others, we're specifically talking about someone who is suffering a mental illness crisis who is homicidal or suicidal.
Yes.
And so that's a particular area, as people have said at different times, but I think we don't say it often enough. Just because you're suffering some anxiety, for example, it doesn't mean you're going to pick up weapons and you're a dangerous person. Just because you're feeling down or even suffering depression, it doesn't automatically. So we're trying to do two things at once. We're trying to destigmatize and not make people feel that mental illness is something that necessarily means you're dangerous. But at the same time, we want to acknowledge that maybe most of these cases involves a type of mental illness that can create a dangerous situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say that, like, for clarification for your viewers too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think possibly it may be helpful. Like I said, when people report out on it or journalists talk about it, that they say that they were, as information comes out, if part of your mental issue is that you're feeling like this man did, that you're receiving messages and you're, feeling that you have to harm people, including yourself, that's specifically someone who is dealing with that kind of ideation, as we call it, homicidal ideation or suicide. So there's that aspect of it. I hate to say failing, but part of the failing is, as I know you've heard, when the information came out and we got more background on this person, how they had said that he had been stopped a while ago. He was not, because of his particular level of mental illness, or not level, but because of what he was diagnosed with or seemed to be suffering from, he was not supposed to have access to guns.
Right.
So that's the policing and, our people who are supposed to protect and serve. That's kind of a dropping the ball in that aspect of it, that area of it. And then citizens in general. I think we need to do more to teach and to train our citizenry about the kinds of things to look for, because it can be someone close to you, it can be a coworker, it can be a family member. Not that everyone has to become a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but if you see certain types of things or hear certain types of things that sometimes we just laugh off, if they're saying something that talks about wanting to harm people, it doesn't mean, I'm not saying be like hyper vigilant where no, every little thing that comes out of your friend's mouth, oh my goodness, I got to call the police. But just to be more aware of those things. We've seen young people do it. We've seen kids do it where they'll see something and then they'll go tell the principal or they'll report it. So I think, being sometimes maybe kids are doing a better job of that. Sometimes our police force or sometimes some of our adults that, again, they laugh it off or they're like, well, I don't want to believe that. That's my, uncle, or that's my, instead of taking it seriously. And when we say take it seriously, it doesn't mean just run to the police with everything, but ask some questions, find out more. Are you serious? Do you really mean that? What so how are you going to do that? Well, now if they answer with a whole detailed plan of what you're about to do, not that that's funny, then that's a real red flag that maybe you do need to say something to some authorities. So I think helping the general public have a few more tools, in their own backyard, in their own family and friends and workplaces about some things to look for and kind of like how to deal with that a little bit can help people feel that as if they have a little more control, if that's a word, a little more comfort and control about their environment. So there's that part of it. There's that whole discussion around, why did he have access to guns? Why did they not follow up? You mentioned in your question also about our culture. That's just a huge part of our identity. And we know that when we try to take something away from an individual or a culture that is just tied into their identity, we just hold on to that for dear life.
Yes, we do.
We hold on to that. And it's a hard thing. It can be a hard thing to let go of or to evolve from or change in some way, even if it's just a little bit. And that is our American society. Unfortunately, we were founded in violence, and violence is a key part of our personality, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. But I think we have to acknowledge it. So that takes, that together with legislative will takes a longer, that's a longer game. Because when we think about trying to help someone deal with aspects of their personality, we're talking about the personality of the culture, that it took a long time to develop. And so it takes time to, try to unravel some of that. And for those viewers who are thinking that I am advocating taking the guns out of people's hands, I'm not advocating for that. But just as you said, Kim, your background and growing up, and others have said, if they grew up around guns or trained to use them, they were also trained. Doggy. They're also trained. Gotta say hi. They're also trained, about the safety aspects of it, where to have it, how to lock it up, who shouldn't have access to it, the minors in the family who are unsupervised or whatever. So that is a part of responsible gun ownership. But unfortunately, the overarching problem in our country is that partly the fear that if you are threatening stronger gun measures, then that means you're going to take away all access, which is not the case. It's not what we're talking about.
Right.
And why is that so scary? It's a part of the identity, and it's also a part of feeling that there's that word again, control. You have some control. So people feel that's another aspect of it. All of these are, intertwining into why we're having this problem. This idea of feeling more powerful. If I have access to my gun, that I'm more powerful, I'm more in control. And if you try to make changes to that aspect of my life, you're trying to take away my control. It's a threat. And that's a culture-wide. Not every single person in the culture, of course, but generally speaking, that's a culture-wide mentality. So
Mhm.
It's a lot.
Mhm.
It's a lot. Yeah.
And you know, so a couple of thoughts. You're absolutely correct, because we saw this in Oxford, Michigan, where the young man who shot several of his classmates had
Mhm.
drawn pictures, had conversations.
Yes.
People knew that
Yes.
there were things going on, yet they ignored it. I can't say that in this case with this particular gentleman. I know that there were some threats that were lodged against different places. I don't know if people understood that at the time when the shooting happened, if they had seen that, or what happened. But we've seen cases like that where people have left notes, especially with social media. And I
Yeah.
can't mention this enough, that with the rise of social media, you have students now who have gotten themselves in trouble because they went online and posted a threat against their school, thinking it would be a prank. And I know here, several of the sheriff's departments in different counties across the state of Michigan have said on a daily basis, they're dealing with at least 3 cases. And I thought, 3 cases of
Mhm.
kids threatening their own school just because you don't want to go to school or whatever it is, because you thought it was funny. And so now we have this issue where you're using resources for when you actually do have a shooting. Because when I learned of Michigan State University's problem, that they had this live shooter, I
Mhm.
heard it from friends through a text message. They were like, "Oh, we have to pray for Michigan State." And I said, "Well, what are we praying for?" And they said, "Kim, there's a shooter on the campus." I said, "There's a shooter on the campus." And so immediately I went to social media and I
Mhm.
started to see video of people running. And I thought, wow, here is the history component of
Mhm.
this day. This is the historical record. You're going to see kids running and screaming in fear, and people giving you personal accounts of how they survived Oxford, how they survived Sandy Hook. And here they are at Michigan State,
Mhm.
sheltering in place from a madman with a gun. I also want to add, I know that oftentimes it's always said, well, in order to combat a madman with a gun, we need a good guy with a gun. Okay, I grew up, and you're right, Dr. Angie. I grew up with a grandfather who hunted. He hunted everything from deer to rabbit, you name it. He hunted it. Funny story, when I was a kid, I love Bugs Bunny. All my friends know that I love Bugs Bunny. And as a kid, yes, as a kid, my grandfather said, "Bugs Bunny's in the kitchen." I was a little girl. And
Oh.
Bunny was laid up with his legs and guts hanging out. And I screamed, and my grandmother yelled at my grandfather, "Why did you do that?" And he thought it was funny. Having said that, though, I knew there were rifles and handguns and all these different things that were kept around the house. Yet
Mhm.
I was always instructed, you do not pick up a gun. I knew not to pick up a gun. I had a healthy fear of that. And I had a healthy fear of my grandparents of what would happen to me if I disobeyed. That's number one. Number
Yeah.
two, you know, in today's time, and we always hear this too, you'll have kids who are left alone, and someone will say, "We needed a gun for protection," but the kids were able to get access to the weapon. And I always tell people, I said, we always pride ourselves in thinking that we've made something childproof or child safety. If you've never tried to open up a childproof medicine bottle and struggled yourself and then handed it to your child, or your child picked it up, and then all of a sudden they were able to open it where you couldn't, there's nothing that's childproof. And kids pay attention and watch us do all kinds of different things. And
Mhm.
so, you know, part of what you were saying in terms of kids having access is correct. You know, society has changed, needs have changed. We no longer have one parent at home most of the time. Now both parents are working, and so many families are struggling with decisions on who cares for the children or what you have to do. People live in increasingly, as you said, it is part of our national psyche. It is. We live in a violent nation. Many people have a weapon for protection. I'm going to go back to Breonna Taylor. Her boyfriend had a weapon because they thought they were under fire. And it turned out that it was a fraudulent FBI raid or a botched FBI raid. Dr. Angie, talk about, and I know I've just given you a lot, but talk about the influence of President Trump and on social media, and how the access to guns has made this an even more dangerous situation. There was a headline that I saw a few days ago. They said there are more guns in America than there are people.
Yes, I have heard that. It's I was thinking about which number was he? 45? The 45?
Yes, he was 45.
Yeah, 45. I'll think about 45. I mean, I will utter his name. I don't say him in terms of president, but Donald Trump.
Yes.
Donald,
yes.
He needs a lot of prayer.
Yes.
A lot of prayer. Yes. And those of his ilk.
Absolutely.
As a Christian, we love the people. We do.
Yes, we do. Turn the cheek, turn the cheek.
Turn it now. Okay. Pray that they be better. Yeah, he had a huge influence. And it's interesting because with Donald Trump in the presidency, it's a false kind of sort of fake kind of Hollywood fake imagery, so to speak. And the reason I say that is because, as we've talked about before, there are a lot of his followers or even people who may not have voted for him, but when they saw him up there, it was like, oh, wow. Oh, I like that. He just say whatever he wants. And it was sort of kind of false because being in the position that he was in, it looked like he could get away with it. So, if he can do that, then I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But as we have seen with these multiple investigations, it takes, around the state, the all kind of federal and state level and everything else. It takes a lot more to, how shall we put it? It takes a lot more for a former president of the United States, that highest position in our land. It takes a lot more to bring charges. I'll put that, prosecute to bring charges. Than it does, those of lesser means, etc. So that's sort of the fake out part of it, is that unfortunately, well, I'll put it this way, the position that he was in, the presidency, is an excellent and a wonderful opportunity. And we've seen presidents down through the years make good use of it and not so good use of it. But it's a unique, we only have a few folks who've actually been in that position. So it's a unique and most powerful position in the world. So on the one, the good and the bad, the good parts and not so good parts, the good parts of it, it can be used in a lot of ways. You can reach a lot of people in a short period of time. And the words that come out of your mouth all of our words are powerful, but we know that the kind of extra power, just because of the position that a person in that position carries. So we had Trump in that position using it to denigrate, put people down, and as psychologists in our field, we talk about verbal abuse. We talk about, the things that come out of our mouths. Psychology didn't invent that. The Bible talks about that.
That's right.
It's a sword. It's a sword. But I mentioned psychology because we do talk about it as one of the categories of abuse. And some of the most damaging abuse, and that includes physical abuse, emotional, psychological, verbal attached to, all of those different things. So it's a weapon, it's very harmful. And he did a lot to give the signal to people that it's okay, that it's acceptable, and that it's actually more than acceptable. It's preferable, if you want to look real strong, to weaponize your language and just run over people's, boundaries and disrespect people. Well, there are consequences to that. Even Donald Trump experienced consequences to that. because he lost his second bid for the presidency by millions.
Yes.
Millions. He is looked at from other leaders that we respect around the world who are trying to do good things for their people. He's looked down upon. So there's definitely consequences to that behavior. But yeah, him being there was just opened a Pandora's box of people feeling that they can just take this and run with it. So that's part of it. And it wasn't just that he said negative things about people and was disrespectful of people and speaking, about them, very damaging. But he also had a very violent, I was going to say tendency, but I'll just public facing. What we've seen in the public sphere is that he speaks lovingly of violent behavior. He has encouraged people to be violent to one another at his rallies. He has encouraged officers to be less gentle and to perhaps handle people that they are arresting or putting into police cars in a more violent manner. So he's displayed all these ways in which harming others is something that he appears to find appealing, since he keeps telling people to do it. And he seems to like that. So again, it just, all of that adds to a culture that already was founded in violence and lovingly cradles guns in their lives as though it's, the absolute part of the identity. So that has unleashed a lot. And the other thing too is that I want to be sure to mention, and this undergirds the very first question that you had, and that a lot of people are asking with this going on. We talked about before, many of us grew up in an era, maybe it was the last couple of eras. They're still around. There are parents and grandparents still doing this, but we grew up in an era where you were taught not to, that you did not get away with treating other people badly. You might get a spanking, you might get a talking to, you might get grounded. You had to come back. I mean, I grew up with siblings, I was one of three. And if someone did something, then you had to come back in the room, tell them, what did you do? You had to say what you did, apologize to your sister, apologize to your brother, say your side. We were, like I said before, my grandmother used to say that you have to teach kids how to love. You have to teach people how to love. And that includes teaching people how to respect one another. So it can be a temptation, it can be tempting to feel that, you can get away with something. And that makes you feel big and strong. But number one, if you're taught how to deal with conflict in healthy ways, whether you're raised or you learn later how to deal with it in ways that maintain your respect and the other person's respect, will have less of this violence. If you have a healthy sense of self-esteem, where your feeling good about yourself is not built upon hurting someone else, that would help also. If we, again, like we said, if we have people who are officers who are charged with making sure that we're safe or helping to make sure we're safe, if the whole police, and that's a whole nother conversation as well. But yeah, all of us have responsibility for helping to bring this down. And that starts with, and definitely includes, what are we teaching our kids about how to deal with conflict with others and how to deal with feeling conflicted within oneself. So that needs to be taught again for those who are already doing it, to keep doing it, and to really, really promote that in society as a whole.
Excellent, Dr. Angie. So here's an important question. We see all of this. We see the video. We see it on social media. We see it on television. It's constantly airing. There was the whole sharing of the funeral, and you're watching the funeral live. How do we protect ourselves? Information is literally at our fingertips, and we can see and immerse ourselves in these scenes. But how do we protect our mental well-being so that we don't fall prey to some of this anger and hostility that we see, and do things that we normally may not do?
That's an excellent question. Well, a couple things, but the first, just to reiterate what we've said on your wonderful program several times in the last couple of years or so, and that is that we do have choice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very, very important. Remind ourselves, teach our kids that we have choices. Just because it's available and accessible doesn't mean that we need to or even should engage in looking at everything that's presented to us.
Mm-hmm.
So as we've talked about before, protecting our mental health, protecting our health in general, our physical health, because there are things that go on physically within the body, in our endocrine system, where the hormones are located, in our neurons, in our brain, that in which impulses are firing and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Your dopamine levels, your serotonin levels, all those things that are tied to our stress levels. So protecting ourselves physically from heightened stress that we don't have to live in, protecting ourselves, like you said, mentally and psychologically from being traumatized and re-traumatized,
Mm-hmm.
having those ideas in mind and treating them like they're priorities and teaching that to each other is very, very, very important, I would say, so that we realize and remember and remind ourselves to take a moment, step back, and ask ourselves questions before we click on something, and realize that there are times in which perhaps we don't need to click on it. Stay informed. You can read about the news, perhaps you can hear it or watch it, whatever. But to your point, the over and over and seeing every little aspect of these things can be harmful and damaging. I will say, though, but in terms of I apologize. In terms of, I turned one down, I got to turn the other one down. In terms of the watching of the funeral, I know for some people that can feel, as a citizen
Mm-hmm.
who didn't know them personally, me, I know the person. I know that can feel like that they're giving some respect. And,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. And that can be important too. If you want to watch the funerals or the dedications, you want to watch some of those vigils
Mm-hmm.
that they host.
Vigils, yes.
Vigils,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Any of those kinds of things that in which they are honoring those who have passed, those who have suffered these tragedies. That can be important, and I can understand that. And that can be psychologically important too, make people feel, like I said, as if they are doing something, even if it's just to watch, to maybe pray for the family or honor so that can be, it can be both healthy, psychologically, mentally, spiritually, to help you feel connected, for sure. But it also can, you have to be careful. There's always a balance. Like the Bible says, there's a balance, there's a time for everything. Perhaps doing too much of that, then you teeter over into feeling more afraid, feeling re-traumatized, feeling, more angry, like you were saying. So again, it's like I was saying, it's important for each person to pause and ask themselves, ask myself a question, ask yourself, should I click on this? Do I need to?
Mm-hmm.
Can I pray for the situation without necessarily looking at more detail about it right now?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the answer may vary situation to situation. The answer may vary depending on where you are in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to ask ourselves those questions. So that's really important. The exercising of choice and teaching our kids and reminding them that they have a choice. A quick story about that, which I love. My friend Denise, she's got her daughter, a young lady, she's in her 20s now, and brilliant and just smart and a sweetheart and everything. And Denise was telling me she was so proud of her daughter because she said that her daughter said to her, you know what, I'm going to just click off of TikTok because I'm finding that when I'm watching some of this stuff, it just makes me feel depressed. It makes me feel that she's just I'm just going, and she was saying how proud she was of her for doing that. And she's absolutely right. There's, a young person who, born into this technological culture to step away like that. So we need to remind people more that they don't have to. And that's important too, because I know folks who it can be a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes such a habit that internally we're not realizing it. And sometimes we may even say it out loud. It's like, oh, I have to, but I have to watch, but I have to see, so I'll know, so I'll be informed, every little bit, And one thing, I think one way to combat that this is a question I will throw out sometimes. And that is, we can't know everything that's going on.
That's right.
At every moment of the day. So if you think you watched everything, you don't know what's going on in Bangladesh necessarily right now. don't know what's going on in a pygmy colony somewhere in Africa, the continent of Africa. Do you know everything? So we're not supposed to necessarily know every little thing, nor should we, because that's God's job.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So there are things, expand your mind, learn about Bangladesh and all the rest. But yeah, that getting rid of that idea that you have to. No, you really don't have to, and why you shouldn't have to, and all that kind of stuff. So the other thing I was going to mention too, besides the exercising of choice and asking ourselves those questions, which is really important, situation to situation, and hand in hand with that is sometimes people will say, well, how will you know? How do I know if I should, if I shouldn't? How do I know if I'm, doing too much of that, looking at too much of that? One way to tell is like my friend's daughter said, think about how you feel. If it's making you feel like, upset consistently, and that's your stress level going up. If it's making you feel angry, or you find yourself angry all the time, then those are real signals that you need to step away from some of that. And so that's one part of it. The other part of it is filling that void, filling it with the joyful parts. There's so much joy, so many things to celebrate just in a given 5 minutes. Like, for example, I get to sit here and talk to the amazing Kim and her amazing audience. How cool is that? I love that. I love my laptop. I love my laptop that my husband bought me a couple years ago for my birthday, but I just love it. So I get to be on my laptop. I get to talk with Kim. I get to share information. No one is booing me out of the room, at least not that I can hear. That's a good time right there. But my lipstick is okay. It's not on my teeth. I can just go down the list. So count your blessing, fill that void. That's the other thing. The way we think is a bit influenced, for sure, maybe more than a bit, by the traits we're born with. We kind of inherited things. People will look at a little baby and some personality will start to show up after a little while. And you'll say, oh my gosh, they're reminding me of grandpa. They're reminding me of. So yes, there are some things we're inherited in terms of our personalities and the way we just kind of like the way we are, the way we think. But so much of the way we think is habit and training and what we're taught and all the rest, which means you can change it. So we can practice. And not only can we, I strongly recommend that we practice positive. We talk about like affirmations, all of those things, counting the blessings, starting your day with positivity, write in the gratefulness journal, really cultivate a mentality to your core question of how we protect ourselves. Cultivate a mentality of joyfulness and purpose. And I really want to end on purpose too. Oftentimes we're seeing people harm themselves and others because they're looking for a sense of purpose and feeling that they have none, or that this is how I'm going to get things done. Now, surely, absolutely, if they're suffering from some mental illness, we know that they're not seeing or thinking clearly, as we might call it, for sure. But oftentimes part of what might, it's not the only thing, but one of the things that we can at least have some control over that might cause a person to go down that road to begin with, as you were asking too earlier, is, there oftentimes you dig into that background, just like this last young man, and you see over time, it doesn't happen just all at once necessarily. It's cultivated over time. The way he was thinking, he was already upset about his life. He was angry. He was finding stuff on the internet to, reinforce his anger. What is that? It's a daily habit of here until you get to the point where. So we can replace that. We can combat that. Real and true pain and tragedy and life struggles happen. Absolutely. But you also, Lord willing, maybe your legs are working and you're able to walk. If your legs aren't working, maybe you're able to read a book. Or if you can't read, you can find, you got that little doggy you can pat on the head, just practice, even if it's hard at first. And then like anything else you practice, you get better at it and better at it until you start to tend to see the positive. And some people really have to work at it. It's just not their personality. And it doesn't mean you're changing your personality or you're tippy-toeing through the tulips necessarily, but at least mentally, spiritually, and psychologically, and yes, even physically, in terms of your stress level and your ability to rest, you can work on becoming a person who sees the joy and invites that into your daily world. And that will inoculate you. It'll go a long way towards inoculating you against, that downward carrying that heavy burden every day.
Dr. Angie, what a way to end the show. That was wonderful. Thank you again for coming on the Kim B. Davis Show. Tell us where we can find you, how we can follow you on social media, and all the things that you have coming up, because you always have a lot.
Thank you. I always appreciate it. You can find me on the, not as many as Kim. I'm not on Stitcher. But I am I'm on Facebook at Angela Celeste May. You can see my name in front of me. So Angela Celeste May, send me a friend request. That's my personal Dr. Angela Celeste May on Facebook. That is my music page. You can follow me there. I am on YouTube as well. I'm still on Twitter. I'm still on Twitter a little bit. I do a little bit here and there on Twitter. And I'm on Instagram as well. All of those, Angela Celeste May. You can find out more about what I'm doing with my music on Reverb Nation. That's REVERB Nation. And then go to that site and look for Angela Celeste May. And you can listen to the music from my 2 albums, etc. What else? Also, for my company with my sister, A.M. May and Associates Incorporated. A stands for Angela, M stands for Michelle, my sister. We are a counseling, consulting, and coaching company. My sister is doing the counseling, so she does telehealth, meaning, doing sessions on, electronically. Meets about once a week with folks physically here in Southeast Michigan. And the 2 of us both do coaching. We do personal and professional coaching, also creative coaching for fellow creatives, because we're both professional musicians as well as social scientists. She's a licensed counselor. Of course, I'm in psychology. And then I also do doctoral coaching. So if you're thinking about working on your doctorate, or if you're already involved in working on your doctorate, definitely contact me to help you coach you with any aspect of that you're needing some extra help with. And then we both do consulting. I do more of the consulting also. So that means working with businesses, both for profit and nonprofit. You can go to our website, which is amassociates.com to find out more about what we're doing. And if you want to reach us, go to our website, amassociates.com, and you can go to either one of our pages on there. You'll see if you would like to set up a discovery call to do some coaching. And then we also have AMA Associates on Facebook, Angela and Celeste May, and we are also on Instagram, Angela and Michelle and Michelle May on Instagram as well. I have my book, which I'm reaching for over here with pages coming out of it. This is my book, Freedom. Where is it? There you are. Freedom. What is the experience of living without negative self-imposed limitations? And you can get this from Amazon. You can get it from barnesandnoble.com as well. And you can get it from Ex Libris, which is an Libris. And basically, that is a research that I did in which I interviewed a small group of people from a wide range of ages, wide range of backgrounds. And we talked about, or they shared with me about how they went from being stuck in their lives in some manner, emotionally or in their career or personally or whatever the case, and how they grew to the point of feeling free of those particular, confines in their lives. So out of those interviews came 7 main themes that are, I would say, just fairly universal for a lot of people, having to do with self-esteem and growth on all kinds of levels. So people have found it very, very, very interesting and very, very helpful. So get your copy. Make sure you get your copy as well. And I am also going to be singing in March at the Congregation. So if you are here in Detroit, yay. March is Women's History Month. And so at the Congregation in Detroit, I will be performing with the wonderful Michael Evans. He will be playing piano for me. He's a fantastic pianist and musician. And so we'll be on Saturday, March 25th from 6 o'clock to 7:30 at the Congregation. So just go to the Congregation website and you should see us there.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you,
Thank,
Dr. Angie, for being on the Kim B. Davis Show. We can't wait till you come back again next month for another
oh,
exciting topic.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. You know, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, everywhere on social media. And it's Kimberly Batchelor Davis, and Bachelor is spelled Batchelor. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can hear this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Wisdom, and Google. You can learn more about me as an author at kimbdavis.com. Thank you again for tuning in. And as always, remember, be magnificent.